Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu sitting in for Riz Khan. As Poland widens its investigation into a secret CIA prison on its soil, will the victims of extraordinary rendition, who are held without charge, ever get justice? In the latest development, lawyers for al-Rahim al-Nashiri want Polish prosecutors to look into his alleged mistreatment at a CIA black site. The Saudi national was suspected of masterminding the USS Cole bombing. Al-Nashiri was allegedly tortured, according to former CIA agents. He is currently being held in Guantanamo Bay but has not been charged. Today we ask, to what extent did US allies support and facilitate CIA black sites on their soil, and can they be held accountable? Remember, you can call in with your questions and comments, and of course you can also send us an SMS or email. Joining me now from New York is Amrit Singh. She is a legal officer with the Open Society Justice Initiative, dedicated to promoting global human rights. She's also author of the book Administration of Torture, a documentary record from Washington to Abu Ghraib and beyond. From Warsaw, we have Mikołaj Pietrzak, who's a lawyer representing al-Nashiri in Poland. And here with me in Washington, D.C. is Navy Lieutenant Commander Stephen Riz, who was appointed by the Pentagon to defend al-Nashiri before U.S. military commissions. Welcome to the show to all of you. Amrit Singh, let me start off with you. A little background into this case. As I've just said there, al-Nashiri was initially arrested for being the mastermind, allegedly the mastermind behind the bombing of the USS Cole. So how did he end up in a prison in Poland?
Well, all of the facts relating to the CIA's extraordinary rendition program are still not available to the public, but we do know from publicly available sources, including a Council of Europe report and a United Nations report, that he was detained in secret in Poland on a CIA black site there, and that he was quote unquote rendered to Poland by the United States government at some point. The point of this case is to vindicate Mr. al-Nashiri's rights, and also to hold the United States accountable for its flagrant disregard of the rule of law in transferring its prisoners across in this manner without any kind of judicial process, holding them incommunicado and torturing them in overseas locations.
Okay, let's go to Mikołaj Pietrzak in Warsaw. Mr. Pietrzak, what is the status of al-Nashiri's case right now in Poland? As I understand it, you've brought this case against the Polish government.
Sorry, it appears I've lost.
Okay, we're having problems talking to Mikołaj Pietrzak. Let's go to Stephen Riz, who's here with us in the studio. Stephen Riz, the charges that were brought, that were going to be brought against al-Nashiri, under the military commission system, that's the system under which he would be tried, right?
That's correct. Yeah. That's where the government said, back in November 2009, when Attorney General Holder said that they were going to try al-Nashiri at the military commissions. Now, what's interesting, and I think what your viewers should know, is that the question as to whether or not these detainees in Guantanamo should be tried in federal court or should they be tried in military commissions. And that's a big question right now that's going on, especially in our government. Now, in 2009, in November, General Holder said that this case was going to be tried in a military commission. Primarily, he said, because it's a military target, the USS Cole. Now, unfortunately, with all due respect to Attorney General Holder, that distinction is specious. Unfortunately, historically and legally, it's incorrect. You don't try somebody in a military commission simply because it's a military target. Now, what I think is also important to note to your viewers is that, back in 2003 and 2004, there were two co-conspirators that the government, the Department of Justice, had indicted in the Southern District of New York. That's federal court. So in 2003, they decided to indict co-conspirators for the bombing of the USS Cole in federal court. So what's going on now in 2010?
Yeah, that seems to be strange. So the two co-conspirators can be tried in a federal court, but not al-Nashiri. He has to go through a military commission.
Right. And what the co-conspirators are being tried for, or being indicted for in federal court, is the same exact crime that al-Nashiri faces before a military commission.
All right, let me ask you this now. What are the major differences in terms of the process from a military commission to a federal court?
And I think you touched upon the issue. Really why the government decided to approach it at a military commission as opposed to go back to the Southern District of New York is that they need to guarantee a conviction. a conviction based on hearsay, other unreliable evidence, and also they need to take away a defendant's right for confrontation. See, in the military commission system, you don't have a right, as the defendant does in the federal court, to actually confront your accusers. So they need essentially these relaxed rules to admit all this unreliable evidence in order to guarantee conviction. And what's even more egregious is not only to guarantee a conviction, but also to seek the death penalty.
So the bar is set a lot lower in a military commission.
Absolutely it is.
Okay. Let's go to Warsaw. We've re-established contact with Nikolai Pierczuk. Mr. Pierczuk, what is the status of the case now in Poland?
Well, we filed an intervention basically in an investigation that's already been running for 2 years regarding CIA black sites in Poland. The investigation was up to this point, it regarded only an abuse of power by Polish officials with regard to the black site in Poland. We have filed an application to the prosecutor running this investigation, asking that he broaden the scope of the investigation to include, above all, torture of al-Nashiri, his illegal detainment and illegal transfer to and from Poland, and other associated criminal offenses.
So just to get one thing clear, your case is not about the guilt or innocence of al-Nashiri. Your case is about whether he was tortured and whether the evidence that was obtained while he was being tortured is admissible in court.
Well, from my point of view, it is irrelevant. It is irrelevant whether a court later finds that Mr. al-Nashiri is or is not guilty of any crimes he, I suppose, will be charged with, because there are no charges, as far as I understand, currently against Mr. al-Nashiri. It is only relevant whether he was tortured, was held illegally or illegally in Poland, whether he had any chance to question the legality of his detainment in Poland before a Polish court, and who was involved in this torture in Poland, and who will be held accountable. I just want to stress, regardless of whether we're dealing with a person who is charged, who is not charged, is a suspect, is indicted or is not indicted, is in fact guilty or not guilty, the actions to which, the treatment to which al-Nashiri was subjected is completely illegal. Completely illegal, and we want to make sure that the people who are responsible for this illegal treatment will be held accountable.
Now, of course, Poland was not the only country that's been accused of playing host to these CIA sites. Has Poland admitted to the existence of a CIA prison there?
Many public officials have officially denied that a CIA black site,
and that includes the president and prime minister as well,
was in Poland. Well, yes. I have reason to believe that many public officials have no idea what they're speaking of. There are a select few who probably possess information, and we certainly hope that examination of witnesses by the prosecutor will lead to hard facts as to who knew, who didn't know about this CIA secret prison.
Okay, let's go to Amrit Singh in New York. Amrit, there was a case brought recently against the Boeing Corporation or one of its subsidiaries for ostensibly transporting these suspects around the world. What was the outcome of that case?
Well, recently the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals dismissed that case, essentially upholding the United States government's invocation of the state secrets privilege as a basis for dismissing the case.
So the case has been dismissed. Now, would that be a major setback to the case that is currently being looked at?
Well, I don't think so, because we are now in Poland and in European territory. The whole point of this case is underscored by the fact that United States courts have systematically closed their doors to victims of the CIA-driven program of extraordinary rendition. Not just the Jeppesen case, which you mentioned before, but the case of Maher Arar, who was rendered from JFK to Syria, where he was tortured for a year. In the case of Khalid al-Masri, who was rendered, picked up in Macedonia, detained for 23 days, and then rendered to Afghanistan by US forces acting in cooperation with Macedonian forces. All of these cases have been systematically dismissed by United States courts. The Jeppesen case was dismissed by the Ninth Circuit most recently. I believe that it is the intention of the lawyers in that case to appeal that case to the Supreme Court. But both the Arar case and the al-Nashiri case are cases in which the Supreme Court declined to exercise its authority to review those cases. So it's particularly important that some other court address the injustices associated with the extraordinary rendition program.
Stephen Reyes, were charges ever brought against al-Nashiri?
They were. Back in July of 2008, the government, the Department of Defense, initially charged al-Nashiri with the USS Cole bombing. Now, in February 2009, those charges were withdrawn and dismissed.
So, so since then, there have been no charges brought against him.
Since then, there has been absolutely no charges.
That effectively denies him his day in court.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, but see, there's more to that too, as well. As in November, as I said before, of last year, they specifically stated that al-Nashiri will be tried in a military commission. Well, it's now October of 2010, and still, he hasn't been charged for the USS Cole bombing.
We are going to take a short break right now. More of our discussion when we return. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Lawyers for a Saudi national accused in the bombing of the USS Cole in 2000 are demanding justice for his alleged torture at the hands of CIA agents in Poland. The case of al-Rahim al-Nashiri could have enormous ramifications for other victims of extraordinary rendition. With me to discuss the issue are from New York, Amrit Singh, who's with the Open Society Justice Initiative, an international group that uses the law to protect and empower people around the world. From Warsaw, lawyer Mikołaj Pietrzak, who has taken up al-Nashiri's case in Poland, and Navy Lieutenant Commander Stephen Reyes, appointed by the Pentagon as defense counsel for al-Nashiri at the U.S. Military Tribunal. Let's get back to the discussion, and I'm going to go straight to an email that we received from Muntaka Ghana, and he writes, investigations should not only implicate the CIA, but Germany, Britain, Turkey, Spain, and other countries directly involved in these black sites. Innocent people kidnapped and tortured must be compensated. Amrit Singh, do we know anything about these black sites in those countries that the email writer talks about?
Well, as I said before, all of the facts relating to the CIA's rendition program are still not available to us because it was a program that was shrouded in an enormous amount of secrecy. But certainly there has been a Council of Europe report that demonstrates that there were black sites, CIA black sites in Poland and Romania, and there have since been news reports that there were black sites, there was at least one black site in Lithuania. There was a Lithuanian parliamentary inquiry that recently could not rule out the existence of those black sites on Lithuanian soil. The question asked is an important one, though, because what we do know is that probably about 28 countries across the world were complicit with the CIA in its extraordinary rendition program. You see, the whole premise of the extraordinary rendition program was to conduct illegal transfers and torture and coercive interrogations off United States soil, so that the United States Constitution could be claimed not to apply, so that the whole thing could be shrouded in secrecy and so on. But in carrying out this CIA rendition program, there were a large number of countries, including Italy, the UK, Germany, Albania, Macedonia, all of whom really need to be held to account in some manner or the other. Of course, all of them, I don't think we can say that there was a detention site on each of these countries, but certainly in one way or another, these countries were complicit in the extraordinary rendition program.
Okay, let's try to get back to Mikołaj Pietrzak in Warsaw. Mr. Pietrzak, at the moment, al-Nashiri is being held at Guantanamo Bay. Can a Polish prosecutor talk to him or obtain evidence from the United States?
Well, there is a mutual legal assistance treaty between Poland and the United States, which has always functioned very well. Whenever the United States wanted any kind of evidence from Poland, they would get it on the basis of this treaty, and the same applied in the other direction. We have obviously requested that the prosecutor use this treaty, use the instruments available to him under this mutual legal assistance treaty to request evidence from the United States, which would obviously include, above all, examination of Mr. al-Nashiri, but also other people as witnesses. And we are, of course, going to be monitoring how this request on the grounds of the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty is performed, not only by Poland, but by the United States.
Now, this is a national case in Poland. Why was the case not initially taken to the European Court of Human Rights?
Well, the European Court of Human Rights is still open to us. As a general principle, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg deals with cases after exhaustion of domestic remedies. That's what we're doing here right now. We are giving Poland a chance, giving it a very good chance, providing it with specific evidence, specific motions, and specific facts to be investigated. Once Poland has performed its investigation, if this investigation proves fruitful and proves to be a source of vindication of al-Nashiri's rights and freedoms, any application and complaint to the European Court of Human Rights will be unnecessary. If, however, the Polish investigation doesn't serve that purpose in full, then of course we will be able to seek protection before the European Court of Human Rights.
Okay, let's go to the phones. We have a caller from the United Kingdom, Shokat in the United Kingdom. Go ahead with your question.
Good evening, Anand. My question I'd like to ask, if such words like lack of accountability and lack of justice is used against CIA, does that prove that the CIA is above the law? Thank you.
Okay, let me put that question to Amrit Singh.
Yes, it certainly does, because that is the way the whole system was apparently set up. As I explained, the extraordinary amount of secrecy that involved the extraordinary rendition program was generated precisely so that the CIA's activities, its torture, its incommunicado detention would be beyond the reach of the law.
Okay, Stephen Race, what is the current status of the case as far as you are concerned?
As far as I'm concerned, the government has expressed an intent to prosecute, but right now it's in suspended animation. The government's still allowed to perfect their case, which they have been doing since 2008.
When you say government, is this the Department of Defense or the Justice Department?
Well, it's the Department of Defense right now, who was assigned to actually prosecute al-Nashiri at the military commissions. But during this time period, they're actually allowed to perfect their case, like as I mentioned, to continue the investigation and to try to drum up some additional evidence. However, since we don't have any charges, on the defense's standpoint, we don't have any ability to get discovery from the government. So essentially, we are left to our own devices to try to come up with a defense to charges that we know are coming up, to the very serious charges.
Right, so in terms of the process, your case then is also stymied by the fact that there are no charges.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess for the lack of a better term, you could say that it's in indefinite hiatus. It's a suspended animation, like I said. So the government is responsible for starting the case. So they're the ones that's going to tell you when is this going to happen, when is al-Nashiri going to be prosecuted. So they're the one with all the cards. Like I said, during this time period, we're left to our own devices to try to come up with a defense.
And in your representations, what's been the response from the Department of Defense?
Well, you know, it's hard to get an actual response, a definitive response. They'll always tell you the same thing, that there are charges pending, that we are going to charge them for a military commission. But when you ask them when, there's never a definitive answer to that. And I think that's an answer that a lot of people want to know. When? If you're going to accuse them of these serious charges, when are you going to bring those charges?
Amrit Singh, what kind of effect would this case have on others who are held in prisons around the world?
Well, I think that it would be an important test of the Europeans, the Polish system and the European system more generally, for holding to account governments that engage in flagrant disregard of the rule of law in the name of national security concerns. It's a very important case. There is another rendition case currently pending before the European Court of Human Rights, also brought by the Open Society Justice Initiative on behalf of Mr. Khalid al-Masri, who's a German national of Lebanese descent. He was also subjected to a horrific treatment at the hands of the Macedonian government and the CIA. And that case is brought against the government of Macedonia for its illegal detention, torture, and transfer of Mr. al-Masri.
Okay, let's go to Mikolaj Piechek. He's going to get the last word on this. We just have a few seconds left, Mr. Piechek. The United States obviously has a file on al-Nashiri. I'm not sure whether that's being held, whether it's with the Department of Defense or the Justice Department. Have you made any attempts to get that?
Well, I can't disclose what, at this moment, any information regarding what evidence we're trying to seek. I just want, if I am to close, I want to make one comment, if I will.
If you could do so quickly, please.
From a continental law perspective, the fact that this man has not been charged with anything effectively and has been detained without right to verification of the legality of detainment for 9 years is an absolute scandal.
Okay, so we're going to have to leave it there.
And the United States should be held accountable.
Thank you, sir. We're going to have to leave it there. And thank you for being with us. Remember, you can watch a podcast of the show on iTunes. This week we're featuring a discussion with Indian External Affairs Minister S.M. Krishna. On the next show, South Africa's ruling ANC is considering a controversial law that it says would regulate the media, but opponents say it's tantamount to censorship. Make sure you tune in for that. See you next time.